Welcome back. You're watching the first edition of Business Morning for the week on Channels Television. Now, we know that the 45th annual meeting taking place at Davos, Switzerland, begins on the 21st. That is this week, and will run up until the 24th. And it has a theme titled The New Global Context. Now, as delegates discuss the effects of political, social, and as well as economic challenges, of course, we know that that's going to be like most of the topical debates at the meeting. But to talk more about Africa's place at the meeting, I'm being joined on the program by the Director, Head of Africa at the World Economic Forum, Elsie Kanza. Hello, Elsie, and thank you for joining me. Oh, we seem to be having issues with... Hello, Elsie, I can hear you now.
You're right, thank you.
So, Elsie, the annual meeting begins in a couple of days in Davos, and like I said, has a theme, the new global context. What makes up the context the meeting wants to focus on?
Well, the new context, and particularly from an African perspective, highlights two key aspects. One is the shifting parameters on the geopolitical stage. In particular, I'd like to emphasize two. One is the rise of strategic competition between countries and across regions. The second is the rise of non-state actors who are disrupting society and economy, for example, Boko Haram in northern Nigeria. And a lot of conversations will take place, one, to just better understand what is going on, and two, to share experiences as well as insights about how to tackle these challenges in a sustainable and meaningful way. The other key issue with respect to Africa in the new global context is that economically, we're starting to see that African economies are diversifying away from commodities, traditional ones such as oil in particular. With the rise of the consumer base, we're seeing new industries such as services and construction and retail picking up and actually starting to drive growth across much of Africa, including in Nigeria. This was something we explored at a meeting in Abuja last year, where you have the creative industry generating quite a few jobs and contributing quite significantly to GDP. And we see this is a good development, and there will be discussions about how to further strengthen this growth, as well as how to deepen it so that we're able to address inequalities that are bothering all of us.
Which means that this meeting, even though it's going to be happening, in Davos, Switzerland, is going to be pretty beneficial for African countries, especially Nigeria.
Absolutely. There are quite a few sessions that are directly relevant to Africa. For example, infrastructure and how we can close the infrastructure gap. In particular, we'll be looking at energy. There'll be quite a few discussions around that. One, new energy sources, but two, also how to bridge the energy access. We'll also have discussions related to agriculture, climate change. We have other issues related to technology and industry. So there's quite a breadth in terms of the content. And this is because at this forum, we're looking to, one, not just look at what's happening in the near term, and as I mentioned earlier, geopolitical risks, but also to renew progress on major regional and global issues. And in particular, in 2015, we have the climate change agenda. We also have the sustainable development goals. And we also have Beijing plus 20. So the number of key global issues coming up that public-private cooperation can enhance. And in addition to that, we have sort of new insights in the areas of arts, media, medicine, science, and technology.
Well, Elsie, many countries are still struggling to reinvigorate growth. The discussion in other countries revolves around the redistribution of wealth. And that was actually the focus of World Economic Forum Africa last year. But how can the needs of developing nations be met with the challenges that we see right now, while still ensuring equality and gender parity as well?
Well, I'd like to highlight two key studies that have been launched just over the last 2 days or so. One is that Winnie Byanyima is one of our co-chairs, and Oxfam has launched a report on inequality, and the forum itself has launched a report on inclusive growth. And what's key about this is that further studies have been done to identify approaches that ensure that growth continues, but it is fair and equitable. And at Davos this year, we will have a number of discussions about inclusive growth, and these two studies will inform that. So you can expect to get new solutions emerging from Davos that will be implemented in the year ahead.
Well, even though we know that the World Economic Forum isn't a policy-making organization, and we know that we're going to be getting so many ideas from most of the participants who are going to be coming for the meeting, how much of these suggestions or ideas made at meetings like this have actually been implemented by participants?
Well, if I just, again, look at Africa as an example and focus on two key issues. One is related to agriculture and our regional initiative called Grow Africa. This actually started from discussions at Davos around the new vision for agriculture. And then were taken forward by not just political leaders, heads of state, but also CEOs, and with further involvement of civil society. And right now we have 10 countries that are implementing different forms of public-private cooperation to boost food security in those countries and to further enhance agribusiness. The second key initiative, which is regional as well, this is the Africa Strategic Infrastructure Initiative, again came out of discussions at Davos, and this has essentially translated into support from the business community to the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa. And right now we have developed a toolkit for how we can accelerate the 51 programs under PIDA. And we're currently focused on how to enhance investment in the Central Corridor as an example of how to move from paper to actual tangible outcomes.
Well, as we already know, this meeting is coming at a critical time for most African countries. Of course, you already mentioned some of those issues that are facing most African countries. But in spite of all of that, will Africa have a strong presence at the meeting?
Absolutely. We're going to have over 100 participants, and this is not just government, heads of state, or business. We also have religious leaders, we have youth leaders, women leaders, we have artists. Angelique Kidjo will be receiving a Crystal Award. In terms of diversification, we're going to have participants from 16 countries. This is unprecedented. In terms of the leadership, back to the heads of state, we're going to have 7 heads of state and government from Guinea, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Kenya, from Tanzania, from Rwanda, from South Africa, as well as from Mali. And all of them will be exploring different issues relevant to their countries, but also representing the continent as a whole. So we're very excited about the Africa Agenda Davos this year.
What about from Nigeria?
I beg your pardon?
What about from Nigeria? You mentioned a couple of other
Nigeria,
African countries, yes.
Yes, we'll have business participation as well as youth leaders from Nigeria. As you're aware, elections take place next month. And this is actually a good time for them.
We seem to be having audio issues there, but I've been speaking with Elsie Kanza. She's the Director, Head of Africa at the World Economic Forum, but we have to leave it here at this time. I'd like to thank Elsie also for joining me on the program all the way from Davos Cluster, Switzerland, venue of the 44th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. It actually begins this week from January 21st to the 24th and has as the theme the new global context. Of course, she says we're going to have, there's going to be a strong African presence at the meeting despite the challenges that are facing most of them, chief of which, of course, is security issues. And, of course, most African countries are battling with domestic economic challenges as well. And let's also forget that most of them have also been battling with health issues. The Ebola virus disease, of course, we know the Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia have had a number of issues with regards to this. And of course, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is also going to be talking about that. He's one of the co-chairs at the meeting of the World Economic Forum, which will be happening in Davos Clusters, Switzerland. Well, Business Morning continues in just a moment, and when we do come back, we'll turn our attention to things happening on the home front. I'll be joined on the program by the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Kari Assets Management Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Please join me again.